You ever stopped to observe how some people navigate emotional storms while maintaining an unshakable serenity, while others crumble at the slightest sign of pressure? There is an ancestral secret that few master, a millennia-old philosophy that, when applied, transforms any ordinary individual into someone capable of facing the most difficult moments without wavering, without breaking, without revealing a single crack of vulnerability. This Stoic code is not just ancient philosophical theory stored in dusty books. It is a mental operating system that shapes the behavior of the strongest, the most resilient, those who seem to have a supernatural control over their emotional reactions. And what if I told you that one of the most iconic characters in popular culture perfectly embodies this Stoic code in every action, every decision, every moment of crisis? I am talking about Batman, the Dark Knight who never shows emotion, even when everything around him is in flames, even when he loses loved ones, even when he faces threats that would make any ordinary person beg for mercy. Batman is not just a masked vigilante, he is the living embodiment of Stoic principles applied to real life. And today you will discover exactly how this Stoic code works and how you can apply it in your most difficult moments to never again allow your emotions to control your actions. Get ready because what you are about to learn will completely change the way you react to stress, disappointments, challenges, and the adversities that life inevitably places in your path. The fundamental principle of the Stoic code that Batman masters with absolute mastery is the radical separation between what you can control and what you cannot control is completely beyond your reach. The Stoics taught over 2,000 years ago that the greatest source of human suffering comes from the desperate attempt to control things that we simply cannot control. And it is exactly this mistake that keeps millions of people trapped in endless cycles of frustration and emotional despair. When Bruce Wayne lost his parents that fateful night in the alley, he had two clear choices before him. He could spend the rest of his life steeped in self-pity and impotent rage, allowing that trauma to define his entire existence. Or he could accept that uncontrollable reality and direct all his energy only toward what was under his absolute control. He chose the second path, the Stoic path, the path that demands true strength. In the difficult moments of your life, you need to understand with crystal clear clarity this fundamental distinction, because it is the difference between being destroyed by circumstances or using those same circumstances as fuel for your personal transformation. When something bad happens, when you face a loss, a betrayal, a monumental failure, your mind instinctively wants to cling to what has passed, wants to endlessly ruminate on what could have been different, wants to waste precious energy trying to change something that is already crystallized in the immutable reality of the past. Batman's Stoic code teaches you something radically different. Immediately accept what has happened without denial, without dramatization, without wasting precious time on useless lamentations, and then instantly redirect all your mental focus only to the variables that are under your control at this very moment. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor who practiced Stoicism while ruling the most powerful empire of the ancient world, wrote in his meditations that you have power over your mind, not over external events. And when you realize this deeply, you find true strength. Batman has internalized this truth to the cellular level of his existence. And that is why he never shows emotion in difficult moments. Not because he is insensitive or robotic, but because he understands with absolute clarity that demonstrating emotional discontrol changes absolutely nothing in the objective reality of the situation he faces. When the Joker blows up hospitals, when Ra's al Ghul threatens to destroy Gotham, when Bane breaks his back and throws his city into absolute chaos, Bruce Wayne does not allow his emotions to dictate his actions because he knows that uncontrolled emotion is the fastest path to catastrophic decisions. In difficult moments, your brain is biologically programmed to enter primitive survival mode, triggering stress hormones that cloud your rational judgment and push you toward impulsive reactions that almost always dramatically worsen the situation you are facing. The Stoic Code teaches you to create a conscious space between the external stimulus and your internal response. And it is exactly in that sacred space that all your power of conscious choice resides. When something terrible happens and you feel that overwhelming wave of negative emotions rising in your chest, wanting to explode outward in despair or blind rage, Pause for 3 complete seconds and take a deep breath while asking yourself this crucial question. Is this emotional reaction going to improve my objective situation? Or is it just going to make me feel temporarily like I am doing something when in reality, I am just wasting vital energy? In the overwhelming majority of cases, you will find that the emotional explosion serves absolutely no practical purpose other than to satisfy a primitive impulse that makes you feel momentarily less powerless. Batman never acts on emotional impulse because he has trained his mind through iron discipline to always insert that critical space between feeling and acting. And it is exactly that capacity that makes him unbeatable, even against physically superior opponents. In your difficult moments, you need to develop that same ability to observe your emotions without being completely dominated by them, recognizing that feelings are just temporary biochemical signals that arise and disappear constantly without requiring you to react to each one of them, as if they were unquestionable military orders. The Stoics practiced a powerful mental exercise called negative visualization, where they regularly imagined the worst things that could happen, not to feed anxiety, but to remove the element of surprise from the emotional shock when inevitable adversities arose. Batman has perfected this technique by creating detailed contingency plans for literally any possible scenario, including strategies to neutralize his own allies should they turn against him. Not because he is paranoid, but because he deeply understands that mental preparation is the best armor against emotional collapse when the crisis finally arrives. When you mentally rehearse difficult scenarios before they happen, your brain develops neural pathways of response that work automatically when the real situation materializes, allowing you to act with strategic clarity even when others around you are completely paralyzed by overwhelming panic. The second fundamental dimension of the Stoic code that Batman embodies with absolute perfection is the unshakable discipline over his external manifestations, regardless of the internal chaos he may be experiencing at any given moment. The Stoics taught that you should be like a rock against which the waves constantly crash, but the rock remains still and transforms even the fury of the ocean into harmless foam around it. Never showing emotion does not mean suppressing or denying legitimate feelings that naturally arise as part of the human experience. It means developing the sophisticated ability to fully feel those emotions internally while maintaining absolute control over how they manifest externally through your words, facial expressions, body language, and subsequent actions. Bruce Wayne certainly feels deep pain when Alfred dies, certainly experiences intense anger when villains massacre innocents, certainly knows visceral fear when facing threats that could not only kill him, but destroy everything he has built over decades of personal sacrifice. The crucial difference is that he has developed through years of rigorous Stoic training the rare ability to experience these emotions without allowing them to completely hijack his mental operating system and turn him into a puppet of his own uncontrolled feelings. In the most difficult moments of your life, the people around you are watching closely how you react, because they unconsciously seek clues about the real gravity of the situation based on your external emotional displays. When you maintain stoic composure even amid chaos, you convey a powerful message that the situation is under control, that there is a plan, that the crisis can be successfully navigated if everyone maintains the necessary calm to think strategically rather than react impulsively. The cascading effect of uncontrolled emotions in crisis situations is devastating and exponentially amplifies the original damage that the adverse event causes. Imagine a business leader who receives news of a catastrophic financial crisis and immediately goes into visible panic in front of his entire team, shouting, demonstrating obvious despair, conveying through every gesture that he has completely lost control of the situation. What inevitably happens? Each team member absorbs that panic like a contagious emotional virus, multiplying internally through their own personal insecurities. And within minutes, you have a situation where there is no longer just one objective crisis, but rather dozens of people in simultaneous emotional collapse, trying to make critical decisions while being neurologically compromised by acute stress. Now imagine the alternative scenario where that same leader receives the same devastating news, certainly feels the full emotional impact internally, but maintains an external presence. Calm and controlled, verbally acknowledges the gravity of the situation without unnecessary dramatization, and immediately directs all collective energy towards a rational analysis of the available options and execution of the best possible path considering the current circumstances. This second Stoic approach not only preserves the cognitive capacity of everyone involved, but often reveals creative solutions that would remain completely invisible under the dense fog of widespread emotional panic. Batman constantly operates in this second mode because he has developed a deep understanding that effectively leading through difficult moments requires you to become the point of emotional stability, around which others can orient themselves when their own internal compasses are spinning out of control. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who spent much of his life as a slave before gaining freedom and teaching the most powerful in Rome, said that it is not the events themselves that disturb people, but rather the judgments they make about those events. This subtle yet profoundly powerful distinction is absolutely central to Batman's Stoic code and explains why he is able to face situations that would psychologically break most people without showing a hint of visible emotional disarray. When something bad happens, you have microseconds to mentally frame that event before your primitive brain takes complete control and triggers a hormonal cascade that will determine your subsequent emotional and behavioral response. If you frame the event as an absolute catastrophe, as unbearable injustice, as definitive proof that the universe conspires against you, your brain obediently produces the corresponding chemical cocktail of despair, victimization, and learned paralysis. But if you frame that same event through the Stoic lens as yet another navigable challenge, as a disguised opportunity for growth through adversity, as a natural test of your ability to remain functional under extreme pressure, your brain produces a completely different neurobiological state that favors resilience, creativity in problem solving, and decisive action, even amidst absolute uncertainty. Batman consciously chooses the second framing in every situation because he understands that the narrative you tell yourself about what is happening determines more than any other isolated factor whether you will emerge victorious or defeated from that specific difficult moment. The Stoic practice of amor fati, which literally means love of fate, teaches that you must develop not only acceptance, but true gratitude for the difficulties you face, because it is precisely these adversities that forge true character and reveal what you are really made of when all superficial layers are stripped away. Bruce Wayne did not become Batman, despite losing his parents that traumatic night. He became Batman precisely because of that catalytic event that could easily have destroyed him had he chosen the path of perpetual victimization instead of the Stoic path of transformation through conscious suffering. In your difficult moments, you have exactly that same binary choice before you. You can allow adversity to permanently break you, turning you into a bitter and resentful version of who you were before, trapping you in a narrative of powerless victimhood of external circumstances, or you can use that same event as a furnace that burns away all impurities and transforms you into a stronger, wiser, more resilient version of yourself. The Stoic Code does not promise that you will not feel pain, does not guarantee that life will be fair, does not offer a magical escape from the harsh realities of human existence. What it offers is something infinitely more valuable, a proven system through millennia to transform inevitable suffering into intentional growth, to convert temporary defeats into permanent education, to use every difficult moment as leverage that propels you to higher levels of personal development that would remain eternally inaccessible if you only lived in a comfort zone without significant challenges. The third and perhaps deepest dimension of Batman's Stoic code for acting in difficult moments is the radical acceptance of universal impermanence and the consequent release of the unhealthy attachment to specific outcomes that are fundamentally outside your absolute control. The Stoics meditated daily on death, not out of morbid obsession with the end, but out of deep wisdom that constantly recognizing the transient nature of everything that exists frees you to act with maximum courage without being paralyzed by the fear of loss. Batman literally faces death every night when he goes out on the streets of Gotham, not because he has a suicidal desire, but because he has made complete peace with his own mortality and decided that living with purpose while it lasts is infinitely superior to existing in cowardly safety, avoiding all risks only to die anyway without having done anything truly meaningful. When you truly internalize that everything is temporary, including your own life and the lives of everyone you love, something paradoxical happens. Instead of falling into depressive nihilism, you experience a deep liberation that allows you to act in difficult moments without being crushed by the paralyzing weight of the fear of losing what you will inevitably lose anyway, eventually. Seneca wrote daily letters about the brevity of life and how most people waste their precious years worrying about trivialities while indefinitely postponing the things that really matter, until suddenly there is no more time left and death arrives to collect the final bill of a life not fully lived. In difficult moments, you face a brutal truth that most people spend monumental energy trying to avoid. You are not as special as you would like to believe. The universe owes you nothing, and bad things happen to good people all the time without deep cosmic reason or perfect distributive justice. The Stoic Code teaches you that accepting this seemingly harsh reality is actually the path to true inner peace because it frees you from the childish fantasy that if you are good enough, work hard enough, follow all the rules perfectly, then somehow you will be immune to the adversities that afflict the rest of mortal humanity. Bruce Wayne did not expect the universe to spare him from tragedy just because he was an innocent child from a good family. He did not waste precious time asking why that happened to him specifically, nor did he build a perpetual victim identity, demanding that the world compensate for his trauma through permanent special treatment. He simply accepted that he lives in a universe where terrible things happen randomly, decided that this was not an excuse to give up on creating personal meaning and purpose, and built his entire life around the mission of reducing the suffering of others, even knowing that he could never completely eliminate it, because imperfection is a fundamental characteristic of material existence. When you stop fighting against this basic reality and start working within your immutable parameters, you free up enormous amounts of mental energy that you previously wasted in futile resistance against the fundamental nature of objective reality. Batman never shows emotion in difficult moments because he has developed, through decades of deliberate stoic practice, the ability to observe his own mental and emotional processes from a slightly detached metacognitive perspective. Like a scientist observing an interesting experiment rather than being completely fused and identified with every thought and feeling that passes through momentary consciousness. The Stoics called this the cosmic perspective, where you mentally step back from your immediate situation and observe from a broader perspective that reveals how even your greatest problems are microscopically insignificant when viewed against the vastness of universal space and time. This does not trivialize your suffering or deny the legitimacy of your real difficulties. It simply puts everything in a healthier context that prevents you from catastrophizing beyond all reasonable proportion and completely losing the necessary perspective to navigate effectively through the current challenge. When Bruce Wayne faces a crisis that threatens to destroy everything, he certainly recognizes the objective gravity of the situation, but simultaneously maintains awareness that he has faced countless previous crises that seemed impossible at the time, but were eventually overcome through calm persistence and disciplined strategic thinking. And this current crisis will also pass one way or another, regardless of how much emotional drama he adds to the experience. The practical application of Batman's Stoic code for acting in difficult moments begins with a daily commitment to train your mind just as you would train your body if you wanted to develop exceptional physical strength. You cannot wait until a crisis happens to start practicing Stoic emotional control, just as you cannot wait until the day of the marathon to start training for running, and expect to successfully complete the 42 kilometers. Start today with small intentional challenges where you consciously practice inserting a pause between stimulus and response, where you observe your automatic emotional reactions without judgment, but also without blind obedience, where you choose a more strategic response instead of the more emotionally gratifying one in the short term. When someone insults you, practice not reacting immediately with defensive anger, but pausing for 3 seconds to ask if the emotional response will improve the situation or merely satisfy a temporarily wounded ego. When you receive disappointing news, practice immediate acceptance of what is instead of wasting energy denying reality or lamenting what should have been different. When facing an unexpected obstacle, practice stoic framing, where you see the challenge as an opportunity in disguise rather than a personal cosmic injustice. Each small daily practice strengthens the neural circuits that will function automatically when you truly need them in genuine, difficult moments that test the limits of your emotional and mental resilience. The lasting legacy of the Stoic Code is not to create emotionless robots or cold people incapable of genuine human connection. It is to develop fully functional human beings who feel everything deeply, but are not enslaved by their own feelings, who face adversity with serene courage, knowing that what matters is not what happens, but how you respond to what happens. Batman represents this stoic ideal not because he is perfect or because he never feels doubt or pain, but because he has developed the rare ability to keep functioning at an optimal level, even when everything inside him wants to crumble. And it is exactly this ability that you can develop. Starting right now through consistent practice of the timeless principles that the Stoics taught millennia ago and that remain as relevant today as they were in ancient Rome. Never showing emotion is not a command to suppress humanity. It is an invitation to master your reactions so that you can act in difficult moments with the full strength of your complete human being, instead of being reduced to a dysfunctional fragment dominated by primitive emotional impulses that make you less than you truly are when you are operating with full awareness and deliberate control over your superior mental and emotional capacities.